Part 1. Ever pause to watch a ceiling fan whirl overhead, feeling a thrill that any moment those screws might give way? That was my life, my marriage spinning so fast the blades blurred, held together by just enough finish to appear stable. Then one evening, I heard that first unsettling rattle. I'm John Miller, 38, dad to Ellie and Max, and husband, at least on paper, to Emily. I draw blueprints and restore aged buildings, coaxing them back from rot and neglect. It's ironic that I could mend crumbling arches and fractured beams without missing a beat, yet overlook the slow fracture forming in my own home. We've been married almost 11 years. Our suburban corner smelled like freshly cut grass and hot asphalt, complete with the chatter of lawnmowers and splashes from sprinkler heads. Emily thrived in real estate, wielding her polished charm like a key to every locked door. Clients would forgive nearly anything when she flashed that confident smile. We had 2 kids, a golden retriever named Buddy who practically ran the household, and a 2-story house framed by a perfect white picket fence. From the curb, it was the poster of middle-class success. And for a long stretch, I believed our foundation was solid, no fireworks every weekend, but a warmth that ran deep. We'd argue about silly things, leaves in the foyer, whose turn it was to unload the dishwasher, but always found our way back to wine and laughter before the night ended. Until it didn't. It began subtly. First was the phone. She'd had it in her hand since the moment she woke up, but lately she'd set it face down at dinner, a curve of silence that didn't belong. When it buzzed, she'd slide her thumb, tuck it aside, and look up at me with a practiced grin as though nothing had happened. Then came the evenings she spent out. Showing in Riverbend, she'd text. Girls' night with Tina. A quick kiss on my cheek and the click-click of her heels echoing down the hall as she slipped into the twilight, trailing a hint of perfume that I didn't own. I shrugged it off, chalking it up to the grind of her work. Real estate clients work around their schedules, nights and weekends. But her alibis started fraying. One night she told me she was grabbing coffee with Tina by the lakefront cafe, yet the next morning, Tina messaged me, "Is Emily okay?" I haven't heard from her. That revelation hit like spoiled milk, cold, sour, and impossible to ignore. Then there was the gym membership. She said she wanted to reclaim her youth, fair enough. But she'd leave already made up, hair curled, lipstick perfect, and return with clothes in a heap and the bathroom door locked tight, as if washing away any trace of the night. One afternoon, I wrapped up a client meeting early and decided to surprise her. Walking through the front door, I expected her laughter, her soft voice calling out, anything. But the house lay empty, silent as a church. No note. No text. I called her voicemail. I checked the fridge, nothing new. An hour later, she strolled in claiming she'd been at the store. No bags. No receipt. My smile masked a pit growing in my gut. Soon I noticed more. The small flinch when I touched her shoulder, a freshly changed phone password. Her body turning toward the wall as I reached to tuck her in. Our conversations turned mechanical, gas bill paid. What time's the parent meeting? Rather than the homegrown jokes we once shared. One night I woke, and her side of the bed was chillingly empty. Soft light from the living room caught her huddled on the couch, phone in hand, eyes distant. I asked if she was all right. She curled her lips in a half-smile and whispered, "Just couldn't sleep. Go back to bed." I obeyed, but the weight of unanswered questions kept me staring at the ceiling long after my eyes closed. My heart thundered as I pictured someone else lighting up her night, someone whose texts made her laugh in ways I hadn't heard in months. I wondered when I stopped being her someone. The next morning, I offered therapy like a casual suggestion. We've grown apart. Talking to someone might help. She let out a short laugh. You worry too much, John. Some things just are. Those words landed like a hammer. Marriage isn't easy. Anyone past the halfway mark knows that. I wanted to believe it was just a rough patch. But then I heard that laugh, soft and playful, echoing behind the locked bathroom door as she soaked in the tub. That laugh I recognized, yet hadn't shared with me in ages, followed by "Stop it, you're terrible." My heart pounded in my ears. I didn't knock. I turned away. No receipts, no incriminating messages, just enough to sense the screws loosening. Enough to know that something precious was slipping through my fingers. Enough to feel the walls around my marriage begin to tremble. Part 2. There's a certain hush that grows in a marriage when doubt takes root. Soft, almost courteous, until it suffocates you. It doesn't come crashing in. It just slips into the edges of conversation, nestles in half-started sentences, and echoes in the quiet spaces between shared meals. That hush had become the new soundtrack of our home. At first, I willed it away. I told myself the fatigue of a 10-year marriage, the burden of raising 2 kids, and constant juggling of work and family had naturally frayed our connection. I blamed Mondays and deadlines and the dull ache of routine. But deep down I knew, a wife doesn't snap her phone face down every time her husband walks through the door unless there's something she's desperate to hide. I began to watch, silently, like a detective tracking small clues. On Tuesday morning, I noticed she sped off before I even finished my coffee, lacing her running shoes so quickly the bow of the laces stayed undone. When I asked, she brushed me off with a quick, just trying to squeeze in a workout. But there was no towel in her bag, and the stack of fresh protein bars on the kitchen counter remained untouched. Later that night, she said she had a late closing with a client. I gave her a nod and a half-smile, then watched her pivot in the hallway mirror, adjust the hem of her shirt, and slip into heels that clipped sharply against the wood floors. She claimed the client wanted to sign paperwork and celebrate with a drink. As she walked out, that faint scent of whiskey drifted back to me. By day 3, I was sifting through location logs on her phone. Find My Phone had mapped her to a residential cul-de-sac instead of the downtown open house she mentioned. My chest tightened, but I kept quiet. I wanted hard answers, not half-whispers. Nightfall became my partner in this investigation. I poured over settings in her backup app, an obscure synchronization tool she thought I'd never find. While she slept, I lifted files, photos, and voice memos to an old laptop stashed in the corner of the office. The jumbled folders told me she was meticulous, erasing every careless note and every screenshot that might betray her. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I drove past the address she'd been mapped to. It was a modest brick townhouse, the kind you'd expect 20-somethings to rent, not a real estate magnate staging a mansion. A single lamp glowed behind drawn curtains. I sat in my car, the engine ticking, and watched her sleek sedan pull up. She stepped out, touching up her makeup in the reflection of the passenger side window. When she turned, I caught the hesitant flicker in her eyes, as though she sensed someone watching her. Then she slipped inside. The next morning, she was back to business, smiling over pancakes, asking about my plans for the day. I poured myself another cup of coffee, stealing my voice. "Where were you last night?" I asked, sliding the mug across the table. "Work emergency," she replied without looking up. "You know how these closings go. Unexpected changes." Her calm irritated me more than an outright confession would have. I said, "This isn't work. I checked the address. You weren't at any office." Her fork froze midair. She dropped her gaze, then placed the utensil down carefully. "Maybe I needed some time alone," she said, voice soft, too measured. That answer didn't satisfy me. So I shifted tactics. That afternoon, I ran into Tina, Emily's best friend, at the grocery store. I feigned surprise. "Hey, Tina. Haven't seen you in a while. Last I heard you two were grabbing coffee last Thursday." Tina squinted. "Coffee? No. I've been at my cousin's. Haven't seen him for a week." I offered a chuckle. Must have been busy schedule mix-up. She smiled politely but looked uneasy. Back home, I planned the next move. Emily never left her laptop unattended, but our daughter Abby played near my office desk, doodling with crayons. Out of nowhere, she looked up and said, "Mommy writes her secret letters with that code." She pointed at a toddler scribble that, to my surprise, matched parts of our home security code reversed. When Emily was inside tucking the kids to bed, I sat at her desk. I typed the reversed code, numbers and letters dancing across the screen. The login prompt accepted it, and the desktop unveiled itself. Folders labeled with dates, pictures blurred at the edges, voice notes with file names like Meetup 2 AM surfaced. Then I found an email thread from someone tagged only as DJ. The subject was innocuous, quick question, but the body was explicit. "Same spot as last time? I have the wine. You have that dress I like? See you at 2:15. The timestamp, 2:15 a.m. I closed the laptop with a jolt, the floor beneath me suddenly hollow. I felt sick, both in fury and in heartbreak. My wife, my partner, had a secret life I never imagined she could build. That weekend, I confronted her gently, not with accusations, but with the weight of my discovery. I pulled out my phone, showed her the location pin, the email preview. She stared at the evidence, eyes widening, lips quivering. "John, just tell me what's happening," I interrupted. Her shoulders hunched. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop." Her apology was the hardest thing I ever heard. She wasn't ready to walk away, and neither was I. Yet I realized our home was no longer the safe haven it once was. Suspicion had woven a web so tight that every glance, every word, felt premeditated. Some silences can't be bridged with therapy or excuses. And as I watched her slump into the kitchen chair, phone face up on the table, screen lit by that same hush, I knew our story had changed forever. Part 3. It's strange how still your heart can go when it first breaks. No thunderclap, no cinematic wail, just a hush settling around every thought. A week after I cracked open her laptop and found that email from David R., I realized half-measure proofs wouldn't suffice. I needed the brittle evidence I couldn't talk myself out of. The mind's a master at weaving lies to ward off pain. I wasn't going to let mine keep me sane. I reached out to a private investigator. Curtis was his name. A wiry ex-detective with hawk eyes and a gravelly voice. Not cheap, but worth every penny for discretion. I handed over Emily's license plate number, her typical work schedule, and the mystery address from David's email thread. He promised me hard facts, photos, time-stamped videos, anything to fill in the missing pieces. Give me until Saturday, Curtis said, tucking the details into a leather portfolio. Those next 4 days felt like living underwater, every breath heavy, every move muffled. Emily carried on with her routine. Perfect hair pinned up, designer heels clicking on the hardwood, that same perfume trailing behind her like a taunt. She never noticed my quiet waiting, or if she did, she didn't care. Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed. I'm outside. Let's talk. I headed out to the curb where his unmarked black SUV waited. Curtis slid open the passenger door and passed me a bulging manila folder. He gave me a sharp look. You sure you want this? He asked. I need to see, I replied. Inside the folder were hundreds of photographs and several short video clips. My chest tightened as I thumbed through the pages. There she was, Emily, laughing, leaning against a car, hand entwined with another man's. The stranger's sleek silver Audi sported a license plate I recognized from her Find My Friend's log. David Reynolds, a friend of friends who'd played at our daughter's birthday. I'd shared beers with him at neighborhood barbecues. To see him in these incriminating images felt like a punch to the gut. One clip showed Emily stepping out of a boutique hotel in a scarlet dress I'd never seen her wear. Her hair was half mussed, her lips glossed with the evocative curve of lust. David emerged seconds later, brushing a wayward strand of hair from her face before they remained locked in a kiss long enough for the hotel security camera to catch every second. Curtis cleared his throat, pulling me from the haze. Evidence, John. You got what you came for. I handed back the folder, my hands unsteady. I thanked him, slipped crisp bills across the seat, and walked home feeling hollow. The house was empty, kids at my sister's for the weekend, Emily at yet another consultation. I gathered the photos and videos on our bed, forming a mosaic of betrayal. For what felt like hours I studied each frame. The timestamp in the corner, the silent promise in her gaze, the certainty of her smile. Grief had simmered down into something colder, an icy determination. By the time Emily slipped through the front door at 5, I was waiting. She carried a slim laptop bag, tossed her keys in the bowl by the door, and smiled. A habit that once stirred butterflies, now sparked bile in my throat. Hey, she began, stopping mid-sentence as her gaze settled on the spread of images. I watched the color drain from her cheeks. Michael, she whispered, my real name, the one reserved for moments of truth. Emily, look, I said, my voice calm but unflinching. I pointed to the first photo, her hand in his. Then to the video still of their kiss. Who is he? Her lips quivered, and she glanced away. This isn't what you think, she stammered. It looks exactly like what it is, I replied softly. My throat constricted, but I kept my tone even. I trusted you. She opened her mouth, but no words came. I gathered the photos, stacking them in that same manila folder. A finality settled in my chest. I closed the door to our bedroom and retreated into the guest room, locking it behind me. Alone, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and drafted an email to a divorce attorney a friend had recommended months ago. Back when I'd suspected nothing more than work stress, I'd saved the contact just in case. The cursor blinked, waiting. My fingers typed. Hello, my name is Michael Miller. I need to discuss filing for divorce. Urgent and confidential. I hit send and watched the confirmation pop up. Then I opened a fresh document titled Operation Freedom. I outlined steps, bank account freezes, custody plans, asset division, a timeline for moving out. I wrote it all in neat bullet points, the architect in me craving structure and chaos. I wasn't going to crumble. I wasn't going to erupt. I was going to rebuild, this time, starting from a blueprint of truth and self-preservation. The walls she once warmed now felt like boundaries I'd quietly erect. Emily would never see it coming, because sometimes the quietest hearts are the ones hardest to break, and the calmest storms leave the clearest skies once they pass. Part 4. There comes a moment in every storm when the roar of the wind softens into a low hum. That's where I found myself. Calm, collected, every raw feeling sealed away behind glass. I'd uncovered the deception. Now I needed to deliver it with surgical precision. Emily thought my silence meant I'd surrendered. Most people do. After everything surfaced, she tried denial first, her voice bright, insisting it was just a fling, a lapse in judgment. When that didn't work, she shifted to explanations, spinning tales of stress and loneliness. Then came the tears, spotless, staged, empty. She pleaded for therapy, for second chances, for grace. I gave her what she asked for. I told her we'd rebuild. She believed me, relief blossoming in her eyes. That was her misstep. Her biggest mistake was underestimating the man she married. Behind the facade of normalcy, date nights, family dinners, Instagram selfies, I was gathering evidence. I dove into our finances with the same zeal I reserved for restoring historic homes. Joint accounts, credit cards, wire transfers. I traced every dollar back until I found an account under a name I didn't recognize, Madeline Rowan. Madeline Rowan had been Emily's alias years ago when she briefly managed a rental property. I'd forgotten. She hadn't. That hidden account held nearly $60,000, quietly siphoned from our shared funds over the last 2 years, transfers disguised as mundane expenses, groceries, school fees, utility payments. I exported every statement, backed up every spreadsheet, and forwarded them to my attorney. When my phone pinged with the word fraud, sent by my lawyer at midnight, I knew the stakes had just doubled. I wasn't satisfied. I needed to understand the full scope, so I turned my sights on David Reynolds. I posed as an investor seeking marketing services for a startup, securing a meeting at a downtown cafe. David arrived, polished and confident, unaware his empire of smoke and mirrors had been built on our money. He bragged about consulting fees, development budgets, and other vague charges that lined his pockets. I watched, notebook in hand, recording every line item he touted. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was profiting from her duplicity. 2 months of covert work, late nights at my study, shifting between architectural plans and email trails, laid the groundwork. Then the opportunity arrived. The Peterson Foundation's Winter Gala, an annual black tie event where everyone in our social circle feigns charity while flaunting wealth. Emily insisted we attend. She called it a fresh start. Perfect. I donned my tux, a tailor-made suit that fit like armor. She chose a scarlet gown, the same shade I'd seen in those hotel photos. It should have made my blood boil, but I felt only the cool clarity of purpose. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and laughter. David Reynolds was there, shaking hands, oblivious. At precisely 8:47 p.m., I stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. The orchestra paused mid-strain. Thank you all for coming to support the Peterson Foundation. I began, voice level and steady. Tonight, I want to acknowledge someone who reminded me that even the strongest structures crumble without a solid foundation. My wife, Emily Miller. Emily's eyes found mine, startled but unconvinced something was amiss. Then the giant screens behind me flickered to life. One by one, invoices, email exchanges, screenshots of bank records, photos of Emily with David, all unveiled in crisp detail. The balance of our accounts laid bare, the alias Madeline Rowan exposed, transactions flagged. Emily's transfers to Madeline Rowan LLC, payments to Reynolds Marketing Ltd, hotel receipts timestamped during supposed work trips. A hush fell. Crystal glasses hovered midair. Emily Miller isn't just carrying on an affair, I continued evenly. She's orchestrated a 2-year scheme of fraud and money laundering, enriching David Reynolds at our expense. And he's here tonight. David froze, mouth opening in disbelief. Michael, this is your evidence, I said, nodding toward the screens. My lawyers have everything. Security approached as murmurs swelled into shock. Emily's hands trembled, tears finally breaking free. Michael, please. I shook my head. I've listened to excuses. I've collected proof. With a final glance at the chaos unfolding behind me, guests whispering, phones recording, David being led away, I stepped off the stage. I walked through the grand ballroom doors into the crisp night, the hum of the gala fading behind me. I didn't look back. Those flickering screens and the implosion of a life built on lies were burning it all down, leaving me with the foundation I needed to rebuild. Truth. Part 5. The aftermath was eerily calm. After the gala spectacle, Emily vanished from our life like a ghost, first with her sister in Asheville, then chasing old friends out west. Our social circles whispered her name, but no one saw her. Her lawyer scrambled for a settlement within days, pleading chaos and remorse. I offered choices: honor the prenup and walk away with the remnants of dignity, or contest it and watch every hidden misdeed spill out in court. Emily chose the prenup. She filed no contest, avoided the courtroom, and didn't bother with farewells. The only echo of her departure came weeks later when I was clearing her last boxes from the guest room. A firm knock sounded at the door. I opened it to find her mother, Sarah, standing there with a battered cardboard box labeled Christmas ornaments. Sarah's face was etched with fatigue, but her eyes held a wary resilience. We settled on the porch, the air crisp with approaching winter. She lit a cigarette, one she claimed to have quit years ago, pulling deeply as if the moment demanded relapse. She kicked me out, Sarah said, not looking at me but speaking to the ghost of her daughter. How dare she? I nodded slowly. Not my words, but hers. Sarah sighed. I tried to warn you. Years ago. I remembered a terse phone call 5 years prior, where she'd hinted at Emily's struggles: heavy drinking, emotional disappearances, unexplained absences. Back then, I dismissed it as family drama. I hadn't wanted to know. Why now? I asked. Because she's coming back, Sarah replied, embers glowing at the tip of her cigarette. 3 days later, Emily returned, late afternoon, hesitant at the threshold. The vibrant woman I'd known was gone. In her place stood someone hollowed by guilt and endless nights awake. She avoided my gaze and offered a quiet, I needed to see her. My daughter, Abby, sat in the living room reading quietly. Childhood innocence and perceptiveness melded in her wide eyes. She'd grown silent since the split, holding on to routines like lifelines. When Emily entered, Abby glanced up. No tears, only stillness. Emily knelt, voice trembling. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Abby studied her mother, then spoke in a soft voice that cut deeper than any courtroom revelation. I told Daddy when I saw you. I thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. Emily's tears came then, not for reconciliation or for justice, but for the world collapsing around her. She realized the only person who ever saw her completely now refused her refuge. She left shortly after, no goodbye to me, only a lingering silhouette fading at the end of the driveway. In the weeks that followed, I didn't celebrate. I didn't seek solace in dating or post motivational cliches about moving on. I settled into life's new architecture, driving Abby to school, rebuilding my firm, repainting the guest room walls. The master bedroom remained untouched, an unbroken monument to what once was. One late night, while cleaning my office, I stumbled upon a folder labeled 2017, Leighton Project. Curiosity pulled me in. Authentic-looking contracts, invoices, and a consulting agreement featuring David Reynolds, dated 3 years before the affair, but bearing my signature. My breath caught. I'd introduced them, hired David's firm for marketing when Emily and I co-funded a listing project. Innocent networking, I'd thought at the time, the crack in our foundation I never saw coming. I realized then that betrayal had a curious origin story. I handed her the match. She lit the fire. But I'd swung the hammer. There's no tidy redemption here. No triumphant finale. Just a father and daughter piecing together a life from the ash. Some nights the embers of regret still glow. Others I sleep peacefully. But I never forget. Because betrayal doesn't crash in with thunder, it sneaks in with familiarity, laughter, and the quiet of everyday routines. And sometimes, it comes disguised in a name you once proudly shared. The end.